On this week's episode, we are proud to bring you the Godfather of Minnesota Olympic weightlifting, Roger Sadecki. Roger and the original Minneapolis-St. weightlifting club were monsters ahead of their time, laying the foundation from the 60s to today, continuing to give back to their communities through coaching, judging, and hosting events for lifters. And finally, this episode is sponsored by Torque Strength and Conditioning. It's a great place to work out and offers a variety of programs. And we hope you enjoy the podcast.
So we're lucky enough to have a real man with us today. We, the three of us, try to dress up as one, but Roger Sadecki has actually been through it all. Do you want to explain a little bit about what you're doing these days and your training and as a coach or writer? Do you want to kind of explain what?
Yeah, I met Roger 5 or 6 years ago through my coach, Bob Jones, and I knew of him right before that
Bob
as well.
Jones Jr.
But yeah, Bob Jones Jr. Sorry. So Bob's dad lifted with Roger and Charlie back in the day, and actually, when we became a part of the LWC here for USA Weightlifting, Charlie walked in my gym to check it out. I think Roger sent him, and it kind of went from there. Because Charlie lives right down the road.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've had a good relationship with him for years.
He moved.
Oh, he did.
Oh, did he move?
Yeah, he moved. He's in Maplewood, but just across 94 or maybe
Oh, okay.
a mile or two.
So not too far then.
Not too far from here.
Gotcha.
So he's still close to Subway, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because he goes to that Subway every day for like 15 years.
So, yeah.
I actually went over there. It was like 6 months ago. They're like, "Have you seen Charlie?" I'm like, "Oh, he got hurt because he fell. That was like last
Yeah.
winter." So they were wondering where he was at. So he's missed.
So Roger, when you started Olympic, how did you get into the sport? Was Olympic weightlifting popular back then? Were you a bodybuilder? Kind of, was it for sports? How did it all begin for you when you got into to working out, if you want to say?
Well, that's. I was in college. In college, actually, high school. High school, really nothing. Just an exercise bar. And,
Sure.
You put some weights on an exercise bar, and a few people did preacher curls, and that was about it in high school.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything.
I think they still do that.
I still do that.
Or to lay on a bench or whatever.
Still do that too.
Anyway, so college was actually between freshman and sophomore year, and I got a job as a lifeguard for the city of Minneapolis. And I met another lifeguard that, Don Cundy, you probably heard of him.
Yeah, he was,
Don Cundy. And he says, Roger, yeah, you're strong, but your string beam is strong. I was pretty thin, and only weighed 145 pounds or so.
Wow.
But I could do, 100 push-ups and that kind of stuff, and 20
Sure.
pull-ups and those kind of exercises. But he says, and he was 185 pounds himself at that time,
Yeah.
and looking pretty strong. Says you gotta lift weights. So I thought about it, and fall quarter's coming up, and there's a class at the University of Minnesota, one credit class. I don't know if they still have these one credit classes. They have a few one credit classes in various physical education sports. but I don't think it's quite like it used to be. Anyway, they had a 1 credit. It's called weight training. And I went in there and I learned how to lift weights, so to speak. And in the same room was the Gopher lifters.
Oh, really?
Really, the Gopher. Well, I hear there's a Gopher lifters again, but it's not like it was in the '60s when I went.
So was that a weightlifting team, or was it like a football team, or what was it?
No, it was weightlifters.
Wow. Okay.
Gopher lifters, weightlifters. There's only 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
Not very many. But I met George Schultz, who was in the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah.
But at the time he was state champ,
Okay.
etc. And he says, well, you got to learn how to Olympic lift. And that was part of the class because they were in the same weight room. So part of that class was you learn Olympic weightlifting.
Sure.
And so there was another kid in that class. He and I got kind of interested in it. And we were both competitive, and he was just a little bit better than I was, and said, well, this ain't going to last long. I'm going to get better. And that was my philosophy from day one.
Okay.
You know, I pick out somebody that's this much, just a little bit higher than me, and I'm going to get you. I'm going to do better than you. And then just keep working up the ladder. Well, this kid was the first one, and there was a novice meet February of the following year. We trained for that, and sure enough, I beat him just a little bit. But that got me stoked up.
Yeah.
And that's how I started weightlifting.
Remember what year that was back? Was that 50s
Yeah,
or 60s?
I remember. That was fall of '62.
Okay, that's great.
Fall of '62 and February of '63. It could have been, no, I'll have to take that back.
Okay.
I think it would be the fall of '61 and February of '62. '62 was my first meet.
Well, either way, that's really impressive that you're doing those Olympic lifts and learning them back when it really was not popular. Was it big in the Olympics at that time, or was it not really a sport when you were training back then?
Well, it was a sport.
It was, okay.
It was a sport, of course it was.
I think it was in the Olympics, in the late 40s? That's when it first got introduced, right?
No, Olympics have been since 1896.
Yeah. But when did Olympic weightlifting get introduced? Like late 30s or late 40s? When was it?
Well, 1896
When
in
it
the
first
Olympic
started?
Games.
Okay.
Oh, weightlifting was in first?
Yes.
Oh, that I did not know.
Knowledge bomb.
No.
Way off.
No, y'all know.
Yeah.
Weightlifting's been in the Olympics.
Yeah.
The Olympics, the modern Olympics, started in 1896.
Okay.
Weightlifting was in the Olympics.
Okay.
They were bumped one Olympic year, but they've been in every year. International Weightlifting Federation's been around since I believe it's 1901.
Okay.
1901, right? I believe there's been an IWF since 1901. The Germans were the main Olympic folks back in those days.
Now, when you started there lifting at the University of Minnesota, was that in the basement that we hear all the stories about?
No.
That was the YMCA, wasn't
That was the YMCA? Okay.
That was the YMCA.
Were you lifting with steel and lowering everything down to the ground?
Well, of course, of course. When we started, I talked about that class in fall of '61. That class was in Cook Hall. I don't know if you all know Cook Hall at the University of Minnesota.
Sure.
It's right next to the rec center now. Rec center is in where the old Memorial Stadium used to be.
Yep.
That's the rec center. Cook Hall was right there.
Okay.
Right there. And what they did and the Memorial Stadium was in the shape of a U, and the open part of the U was Cook Hall.
Okay.
Well, during the fall, during the football season, they put in temporary bleachers. So it blocked off Cook Hall, but they had bleachers then for football. Well, anyway, so the weight room was in Cook Hall, and it was on the 4th floor windows, all windows overlooking Memorial Stadium.
That's great.
But, well, let's just see what year. No, I probably losing track. They moved to Stadium North. Underneath Memorial Stadium, all underneath, were all these recreational rooms.
Sure.
Boxing was in North Tower, then wrestling, then there were handball and racquetball courts all the way around to the south tower of Memorial Stadium where golf was, indoor golf. So that was all underneath Memorial Stadium. Very, very interesting.
So when you were on the top of Cook Hall, were there classrooms beneath you? Would they complain from all the dropping of the weights, or was it accepted back then?
We didn't have bumpers back then either, though, so you had to set weights down.
Did you really?
Yeah.
No, we didn't set weights.
Well, you kind of set weights down, yeah.
Well, the Olympic lifters didn't set weights down.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone else probably set them down.
Oh,
It
okay.
was,
Part of it.
I don't know, yeah. And they didn't train until afternoon anyway, late
Oh, yeah.
afternoon. But there were, third floor, yes, there was a classroom underneath that, yes. And then on the other side of us was was a basketball court, sort of a basketball court, but it was mainly gymnastics. Gymnastics had all their facilities of gymnastics were at Cook Hall on 3rd and 4th. 3rd and 4th was all one floor for gymnastics and that, except for us in the 4th floor weight room and the 3rd floor classroom.
Sure. So after this period of time, what was your next path? Did you continue to train for competitions while in college or afterwards, or how did you kind of escalate everything as your path continued on?
Yeah, I just kept. I sort of entered anything that came along.
Okay.
Basically, and what came along was odd lifting.
Odd lifting?
Odd lifting.
What is that?
No, this is before powerlifting was called powerlifting.
Oh, okay.
It was called odd lifting.
That's great. It is odd.
Powerlifting was actually called powerlifting, I think, in about '68 or so.
Was that an acronym for something, or was it just called odd lifting?
Well, it was
The
just,
odd lifts?
It was just
Yeah,
called
okay.
odd lifts. Yeah,
Sure.
It was the odd lifts. It was.
Okay.
There were books on odd lifts, but
Was that from the Russians, or is that all just basic odd lifts?
just basic
Okay.
all kinds of different odd lifts. But the ones that were competed were bench, deadlift, squat. Then they also had a press behind the neck. They had an upright row. Those were the ones that were mainly competition-wise.
Really? Okay.
Wow, an upright row.
That's crazy.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never did an upright row. I did press behind neck in competition.
Do you remember what your highest number was on that competition at all, or?
No, but well, yes, I think so. I think I did 200, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
190, 200.
Come from a dead stop in the back?
Oh yeah, well of
Okay.
course it's on your back
Sure.
like you're squatting it.
Yeah. That's
It's
impressive.
pretty legit for a.
Yeah.
But later on, I was good on the. That was my best exercise was the press.
Okay.
Later on, in about 1967, I was in the military, in the Air Force, and we had an Air Force team. And I did some press behind the neck just to show off. And at that time, I still weighed it. Well, my first competition, I weighed 143 pounds.
Wow.
Go there. But then I gained up to the 165 class fairly quickly. So I was in the 165 class for a few years. I was still in the 165 class in about 1967 when I tried to show off a little bit my press behind the neck. And I did 100 kilos for a triple and 110 kilos for a single,
Wow.
weighing 165.
Yeah,
and
is that about 220, 242?
Yeah.
Did anybody else even try it, or they just sit back with their jaw
Yeah,
dropped?
others tried it. Nobody could.
That's
The 165 guy.
Yeah.
In fact, we had.
I'd go home.
The reason I was trying to show off was because we had Russ Nip. I don't know if anybody knows Russ Nip. The name Russ Nip.
No, what's his story?
Well, Russ Nip. I'm not sure if he was in the Olympics or not, but he won. He was in World Championships.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he also won the Nationals several times.
And he was in the Air Force with you?
No, he was invited over. He was sort of in town or near town.
Sure.
Was invited over to train with us. He held the world press record at one time.
Wow.
World press record.
Wow.
But he could only press behind the neck 200 pounds.
So the world press. So you had him there.
So I had him there.
That's great. That's great. So how long were you in the Air Force for?
A little over 4 years.
Okay.
And we had a pretty good team. We had several national champions. Homer Branham, who was also a powerlifting national champion. He was a national champion. We had Pete Rollick, Tom Hertz, Hernandez, Gargano. They were all national champions, all in the Air Force.
Oh, wow.
The Air Force had a heck of a team. I went to, and we had another guy in my class that was a little bit better than me, and that was my goal while I was there anyway. And then we also had Pete Rollick, who was a national champion, so we were stacked in that 165 class. And in 1968, we all went to the national juniors. Juniors back then was a different thing. It was juniors back then. There was a teenage nationals. Now it's called the junior nationals.
Okay.
But it was called teenage nationals back in the 60s. The junior nationals were for folks that have never won the national championship. Anyway, the Air Force team at this meet in Milwaukee placed first. And as you know, Tyler certainly knows that you can only have 2 athletes in any one weight class on your team. Well, Homer Branham, he's the captain of the team. He names Rollick and Roger Quinn, the other guy, on the team. And that kind of pissed me off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why.
So I went into that meet, and Quinn was ahead of me after the snatch and after the press, and after the snatch he was ahead of me, and I needed more than 10 pounds. I can't remember exactly how many pounds, maybe even 15 pounds to get ahead of Quinn. I said to Homer, "Hey, give me this weight. I can do it." Homer looks, "Are you crazy? Give me this weight. I can do it. I can beat Quinn." And I took it, 341 pounds, and I beat him.
Clean and jerk twin meets.
Wow. At 165 weight? Holy smokes. That's impressive.
That was your clean and jerk or your clean and press?
Clean and jerk.
Clean and jerk,
Wow.
nice. That's what we always say.
No, clean and press went out. The last time you could do that was 1972. It was dropped after the Olympics of 72.
Yep.
Okay.
And in the Olympic trials in Detroit, I pressed 147.5
Wow.
or 325.
Jesus.
Wow.
That was in the 82.5 class.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So then after competing in the Air Force group, did you then move back to this area? Is that where you started training along with Charlie and Bob Jones? How did that all come along?
Yes. I worked. I got a job. After several months, I got a job with the Minnesota Department of Transportation and worked at the transportation building
Okay.
next to the Capitol or near the Capitol.
Sure.
And found out about St. Paul, downtown St. Paul YMCA, which is just across the freeway now.
Okay.
There's no freeway. Well, yeah, the freeway was built then. Anyway, so I started training there. There was another guy at the transportation department that worked out there. That's where I met Charlie and Bob Jones Sr.
Okay.
and all those folks and trained there. In fact, prior to 1972, somewhere around 71, Ken Patera trained there
Oh, really?
for about a year.
And he had was he the first one to press 500 over his head? Was that his big lift back when he competed? You know.
He was the first one in USA
Okay.
to do a press 500. Yeah.
Okay. So he was training in St. Paul with you guys now. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
We still got to get him on here.
Yeah.
He lives like down the street.
Yeah.
Really?
He lives here in
Call
Woodbury.
sometime, Roger. and
I
give
know
him
where
a
he
picture.
lives. I just don't want to be a fanboy and knock on his door. But maybe I might.
Yeah, that'd be fun. How long did you guys train there for? And at that time, were you still competing? And how long did you compete yourself until you kind of transferred over into coaching? How did that transpire?
Well, I kept competing for quite a while.
Okay.
I competed in 12 national championships
Wow.
between 67 and 79.
How old were you your last national championship?
I would have been 36 or 37. Maybe
Yeah, I would say
36.
that's you just don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
That's
No,
really impressive.
At that level.
At that particular time, Masters was 40 and over.
Okay.
And the reason they went to 35 and over, the Masters said, well, we want more participation.
Yeah.
It was just numbers game, that's all it
Yeah.
was. But there was no reason to put the 35 or 35 to 39 in there. They should be competing with the other folks, I think, and still even today.
Are you good and everything?
So
Yeah, keep going.
let's talk programming a little bit. So, like writing programs for your athletes, what are kind of your philosophies as far as that goes? What are your biggest inspirations or the things that you learned from?
Oh, I don't know, sort of difficult question. I guess it sort of depends on the level. If it's a beginner, there really is no programming. You just kind of do the lifts.
Practice.
Teach them how to do the lifts.
Yeah.
After they've been in it for a while and know how to lift and are able to start programming, then I sort of go by the philosophy of what they did back in the 80s when they put together the coaches' manuals back then, which basically came from Bulgarians. Bulgarians changed a little bit since then. They're more intensive now than before. The program before now they seem to be intensive all the time.
More higher percentages of 1 rep max and maxing out.
Yeah, but back then it was a cyclic. You cycle. You cycle. Say if your competition is 8 weeks away, you'll start at a lower cycle. I just throw some numbers out that, don't quote me on numbers or anything, but say 75%, then the next week you're 80%, then you're 85, then you're 90, then you drop back down, to 85 or 80, then back up to 90, and then you're ready for your competition.
Okay.
So you're kind
Yeah.
of cycling like that.
Yep.
Kind of like linear progression with a little bit of waves as far as the percentages. Yeah, it works really well. We do some of that.
So going back to your 12 national championships real quick, is there one of those you remember or you had a better time at than the others? Was it the venue, the place, or just how your performance went?
Well, I don't know.
Or did you kick ass at all of them?
Well, I remember most of them. I bombed out in some of them, so I don't want to remember. I guess the 1972 where I brushed the 147.5
Wow.
would stand out. I placed fourth in two of them.
Okay.
Otherwise, I generally would place around 8th, 9th,
Okay.
something like that.
Was there a lot of turnover throughout the years? The same group of people in your class?
Well, a little of both, I suppose.
Okay.
I don't know, a little of both. You know, some people hang around and last a while. Others see them 1 or 2 years and they're gone.
Sure. What was your philosophy going into a meet? Was it to get, all the lifts in, get a number on the board, or were you taking chances and you didn't mind if you bombed out because you were going for more weight? Did you have either one? You want to go 6 for 6, or did it not matter?
No, it was just philosophy was just to get the best I could. Basically, just get the best I could, and psychologically be prepared. Psychologically more than anything else.
Okay.
All the training, be prepared.
So psychologically, how would you do that yourself? Was it just, were you envisioning a lot of things in your head? Were you, for you, what worked?
Well, what worked was more than anything would be to imagine it in my head. Even go to sleep at night thinking, seeing myself, close my eyes, seeing myself doing a huge clean and jerk.
Okay.
How exactly it's going to go. Probably be similar to what a gymnast would go through.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, they stand before the parallel bars, or they stand before the high bar, and they visualize their routine that they're going to go through. It was the same thing in weightlifting. You're standing at the back of the platform and you're visualizing exactly how it's going to go. If you're not doing that, if I wasn't doing that, the big weight's not going to go.
You hear about that a lot, the visualization. Some of the top athletes, they use it to their advantage so well.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think, well, any top athlete like that, we've all visualized, right? All of us have done something in athletics at one level or the other. But I always like that they talk about top athletes, all of a sudden they visualize, but then when they do the thing, whatever it may be, whatever sport, it just becomes like second nature. Then they don't have to think about it. More that flow state, so to speak. Especially you hear that a lot in like fighting. But
It's like you've been there before already.
yeah, and I know I've felt it in football. I know we've talked about it. And in weightlifting, I've felt it. Not as much as football, because I wasn't as good as a weightlifter as I was at football. But I think that's a huge thing. Is it has to become like a mind-body connection, which you always hear. It's great to hear someone even back in the 60s and 70s they did it, right? It was just became second nature. So.
Who did you have coaches back when you were training, or did you kind of self-learn it with you and your lifting partners? How did that go for you?
Well, originally, I was kind of self-trained. Even going back to the Go for Lifters there, it was a monkey see, monkey do.
Okay.
But I looked at the monkey that was doing it very well, and just kind of emulate that and copy that.
Sure.
I learned it myself. Back in those days, we had books and magazines like Strength and Health. Today, you don't have that stuff. Well, today, of course, you have the internet. But I've seen they got Facebook and all this other Instagram, and everybody's putting their stuff on there, and if you look at a lot of that stuff, even some of the stuff that somebody's talking about, telling you how to do it, is all junk to me.
Oh no, we're in agreement.
Don't worry. There's a lot out there.
There's a lot of talk about that.
Sell garbage.
Yeah.
So with that, then you competed last in '79. You said, was it?
My last nationals.
Yeah. So you competed after nationals still then?
Well, I was still competing. I competed in Minnesota here. And,
oh yeah, I have pictures of you, Roger, from the '80s.
Well, there isn't as much depth. Well, there still isn't that much. Well, there's more depth, but there's not as much. There isn't any more quality.
Okay.
Put it that way.
I like it.
Because I want to say that back in my last nationals, '79, all the nationals before that, as an 82.5 kilo, I had to the qualifying total to get into nationals was somewhere around 285 kilos.
Jesus.
Well, what's the qualifying today for the 85, now it's 81.
81 or 89.
Yeah, what is it?
I have them on my board in my office.
Yeah, it isn't anymore.
No, I think it's like 270.
It's actually
275.
less.
Yeah, it's less. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So now you have, well, back then, I was lucky. I did all I could do to make the nationals every year.
Because 285, I mean, I know we were looking at Tucker's the other day, and I think it's, Christ, what was it, late 290s or something? But he's a 105. But he's a, oh my God, what's the new one? What's he weigh? He's like 110. But again, it's not that much off what you were doing, and he's 20 kilos heavier.
They just want
30 kilos heavier.
participation now. It's a big participation thing, and they got
especially with the AO series.
The AO series
nationals.
is all, the AO series especially is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's it. I get what they're trying to do, but at the same time, like I remember when it first came out, I'm like, dude, I could qualify with my powers.
Yeah.
So why go? It doesn't have that caliber to it, that higher caliber anyways.
Well, look at our high school program, high school weightlifting program. The qualifying totals to get into the high school state championship are higher than the nationals.
That's ridiculous. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah.
Well, even our state LWC is like what, comparable to Natty, Universal Nationals, probably.
Yeah, right.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good
it
to have
is.
that if they're stronger than nationals.
Yeah.
This is a lot more about what you were able to do, a lot more pride for what you did.
Well, we'll know exactly. And that's something we kind of backtrack a little bit. Going back to Twin City Barbell, because you guys kind of set the whole tone for the whole state. Back then, it's transpired to now. Maybe we go back and talk a little bit how that kind of came about between, how Twin City Barbell was formed. Because that's what any club always talks about in Minnesota. Because now the LWC culture here in Minnesota is great. I mean, we have a lot of lifting. The numbers are good. It's something I talk to when I travel, look at other states. They just don't quite have what we do, especially in the Midwest.
Well, we've been doing the same thing for a long time. I'm not sure what you're asking.
How did the gym start, or how you guys began all that?
Yeah. Like how did it all kind of start?
Well, it just I don't know. It started with the Minneapolis weightlifting club. We had a Minneapolis weightlifting club, which was just prior to the St. Paul, downtown St. Paul. We had a Minneapolis weightlifting club. Some of the same people, actually. And some of those people moved over from Gopher Lifters to a Minneapolis weightlifting club.
Okay.
And then things change quickly all the time. Some of those people left. I left for the military, and when I left after I left for the military in 66 to 70, Minneapolis weightlifting club went down the tubes, I think. But the guys were still there. when I came back, I said, well, we got to change this club to a St. Paul Downtown YMCA, and that's what we did.
Okay.
So the name changed to the St. Paul YMCA, Downtown YMCA. Then they demolished that building. I forget what year exactly, maybe 1990, I don't know, I can't
Okay.
remember. Or late 80s probably. And they moved us to the East Side. It was East Side YMCA, so we changed our name to the East Side YMCA weightlifting club. But it's still the same weightlifting club, basically. So our club, well then Bob Jones Sr., while we were at East Side YMCA, Bob Sr. did a lot for us. Ran fundraisers, things like that. Got some money. That's when we became a 501c3 and all those kinds of things. It was back in the late 80s. And that was all because Bob Jones kind of pushed that, and I saw it through, but he really pushed that and started that out. And he says, we got to change our name, and says Twin City. Somebody come up with Twin City Barbell, and I don't remember who even. Probably must have been Bob Sr. So then we became Twin City Barbell. So we're talking the same club, from Minneapolis to downtown YMCA to East Side YMCA to Twin City Barbell. It's the same club since the 60s.
Wow. Cool thing about that is y'all stuck together.
Yeah.
A lot of
Left and came
camaraderie.
back. Yeah.
So when did you, within all that and within Twin Cities Barbell, and when your competing days may have started slowing down, when did you start getting into coaching, and how did that just naturally transpire with the kids who were coming in there? Or how did that work?
Well, you're always kind of coaching, even as an athlete. Athletes help coach too. So it's kind of a smooth transition from athlete to athlete coaching to coaching, and in those coaching courses that I talked about in the 80s there with the Bulgarian program and that, those were USA Weightlifting. It was called USA Weightlifting. Changed their name a few times too. I can't remember what they were.
Well, there used to be two federations, right?
No.
Or how'd that work? Because I just remember Bob explaining him for some meet he had to like transfer something. I don't remember. This was back. Maybe it was because it was like when he was a younger athlete moving up into a junior or something. I remember him explaining it to me. I could be talking out my ass, but I remember it was something to do with some federations for him to go to some big meet, like overseas actually.
Well, International Weightlifting Federation. No, it would have been. Well, when I started, it was AAU actually. Amateur Athletic Union. There was no such thing as.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And amateur athletic, the Congress said you can't do this, and each sport should have their own federation, etc. So the AAU still exists, but each sport became their own federation then.
Okay.
And that's when United States Weightlifting became the federation.
Okay, that makes sense.
So then how did you take on your lift? Was with Bob Jones Jr., did he just kind of naturally fit in because he's hanging out in the gym, and was he one of your most active lifters, or who are some of those, and how do those come to be within yourself?
Yeah, this was at the old downtown YMCA where Bob Jr. trained, and Charlie Jones had a big say in it, and I actually wrote Bob Jones Jr. If he remembers. And I wrote his programs.
Okay.
But then Charlie kind of took over, and you know how Charlie is. No matter who the coach is, Charlie's going to take over.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's just something you got to live with. And then Brian Derwin got involved later on, and Derwin took over to Charlie Jones's dismay and everyone else's dismay, I guess. But Bob Jr. kind of likes Derwin, so we don't push that too much.
This is great.
Whoever's going to hear this.
I'll give Bob shit. He'll be here actually in a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Did you travel with Bob on any of his national or international?
Well, you
trips,
coached a
or?
bunch of national teams in the 80s, right?
No.
Well, I saw there's a bunch of pictures with you on some of the teams. Hell, I have them hanging up actually. They're somewhere over there.
Or the Pan Am Games, maybe?
Maybe it was
or-
Pan Am's, yeah.
No. The Olympic festivals took over. There was a U.S. Olympic festival
Okay.
from maybe mid-'80s to
Okay.
early '90s,
Okay.
approximately. And I coached some of those teams.
Okay. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. Because it was well, a lot of the same guys are on those, like.
But I really never. Well, I did coach some international teams, but not very many.
Okay.
I became a manager and technical official expert.
Is that how your transition came from into that, like what you're doing now?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of back in the 80s then?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to kind of go over that? Because it's a huge deal what you do. So, Twin City Barbell, athlete, coach, and then basically how that transition happening for you to be a technical advisor and everything.
Well, I don't know. My big break was in 1982, so to speak, when they were selecting the staff for the World Championships, and my name came up for a team manager, and Jim Schmitz, of course, he had athletes, all kinds of athletes
Yep.
on the team.
Sport Palace? Sport Palace was his
Sport
club?
Palace.
Yeah, just so people know what
it
we're
was
talking
the
about. Yeah.
Sports Palace. And Murray Levin was the chair of weightlifting at the time. I'm sitting in the meeting, and my name, like I say, my name came up, and Schmitz's name came up, and there's some kind of voting going on. And I guess people thought it ought to be shared, so to speak. Jim is already gone to several things. He's going anyway because he's got athletes. He's going to coach. Let's start sharing this out a bit. So I think it ended up a tie between Schmitz and I for the team manager. Murray Levin breaks the tie. Well, we're going to give it to Sadecki, and that was kind of my break.
Gotcha.
So I was a team manager for the 1982 World Team. Went to Ljubljana, Yugoslavia. At that time, VCRs were in their infancy.
What are those?
Yeah, so you can be
Explain.
Isn't that what they were called? VCRs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those big boxes you put inside of another box.
Anyway, Charlie Jones had one. And Charlie says, here, take this with you. Get some films. And I took it with me and filmed almost the whole meet. And you're seeing some of that now through Hook Rip and all these other things from 1982.
Yeah.
1982, what I especially remember about something like that was guys from Bulgaria, say in the 165-pound class, 75-kilo class, Bashov and Rusev setting a world record clean and jerk one right after the other, 4 in a row,
Wow.
half a kilo at a time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And world records were back in the early '80s. There, well, from if it's infancy, when we started doing the 3 Olympic lifts. Now there were five lifts back in 1896, but since about the 1920s, there have been 3 lifts. And if you plotted the world records, Scientific American magazine had this in their magazine, and they're looking at world records for various sports. They all had linear lines going upward. The world records, weightlifting no different. World records going up at a linear pace. It was all men then. There was no women, except when you got to the 1980s, and yeah, admittedly, probably a drug deal, with drugs and all of that, but it started going exponentially, geometrically upward like that. It was crazy.
Like nearly a 90-degree.
That's what we always talk about with Olympic weightlifting. Like, 80s are the heyday of it.
That was the heyday.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I'm still around. I got so many memories of the heyday of weightlifting.
Yeah. It's crazy to look at some of the numbers back then compared to now, especially some of the Sinclairs.
Well,
are just unreal.
These records I mentioned in 1982, the first time I went as a team manager, those guys, 75 kilo, those guys were doing, it was like 205, 206, 207, 208. What's the world record now?
I couldn't tell you.
It's
not that.
Probably less.
Oh, yeah.
Probably less.
It's not that. And you see, I mean, the numbers have gotten up quite a bit in certain things, but you still look at what they were back then.
Well, they've gone up because they've eliminated all those records. They started,
Well, exactly.
Keep changing the weight.
Well, they changed the weight classes
change the
twice
weight
now.
class, and they make some sort of, and when they change the weight class, well, then you start the records over again.
Yep.
So that's why they're going up.
So it looks exciting, but really it's,
How do you feel back? Yeah.
it's not the same.
It'd be interesting to put all that data together and try to
Just see,
kind of put those weight classes close together. And
Oh yeah, see like what Rachmaninoff's weight, what he was lifting
Pound
compared
for
to
pound.
Yeah.
Just kind of
compared to
strong
Lasha.
overall, yeah.
Which here's another thing, by the way, not to, I'm kind of privy to this. Back then, guys just looked like men. Just saying, they were like fucking,
build.
they were fucking ripped. Like, and now, I mean, no offense, Lasha's strong, but he just got this big old pot belly.
Doesn't look like
Then
he
look at
lifts weight.
Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff looks like a goddamn Hulk with a weird ass haircut. Like
Well, I think
they just look different too.
But the food was different back then too, right? It was
Well,
probably
the guys were drinking vodka before training.
Yes, yeah.
They
That
probably
had to be
partied
it.
a little harder. Maybe the drugs were better. At least now they can't detect them as well because they're cleaner. So it's just crazy.
I remember going to the '76 Olympics as a spectator in Montreal, and half the weightlifters between snatch and clean and jerk went outside to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah, I remember. I think you told me that before, which is just fucking.
I've heard that part of the reason that the Bulgarians had so many splits between their workouts or so many sessions was because they were smoking cigarettes
Smoke
between.
breaks.
Yeah, they had to have their smoke breaks
Yeah.
between their
Gotta
snatch
smoke
and their squat. And,
I'm not gonna lie, I hit a PR one time because Bob made me settle down and take a shot of whiskey. It fucking worked. It worked. Get a little calm, a little loose. Like, all right, let's go.
No, back then, all the Bulgarians looked the same. By that I mean, your 60 kilo was this high and this big. The 67 kilos that high and this big. But they all look the same.
what's that toy where you pull it apart and there's just all the different...
Oh yeah.
The same physique, the same face.
Sure.
Everything about them was the same.
Same
They were
drugs.
Well, yeah, a lot of D-ball. Thank you, East Germans.
One was just bigger than the other. That's all.
They know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, of course, yeah.
Very
So
specific
then through the 80s, you had, like we said, that was the heyday of weightlifting. What then kind of happened after 82, where that kind of progressed where you are now through the 90s and 2000s?
Well, a lot of that had to do with more coaching. Actually, more administrating, because I've been the LWC chairman for decades, administrating and getting into refereeing at national meets. And by the late 90s, I started refereeing at international meets, and I just kept doing that. So some of that was all fate.
Yeah.
You know, everything to me ends up being fate. People say, well, you can adjust your own fate, but that's pretty damn difficult. I think it's just, you know, fate is out there, and that's the way things happen. Late 90s, Larry Hanneman died. He was the technical committee chair. He was going to the Pan Ams in '99 in Winnipeg for the as a referee, and I took over. Dr. Pursley was kind of the kingpin technical officials in the early 2000s. He left. I'm not sure why or when. I took over as a technical committee chair, and I ended up going to many world championships as a referee. I went to 2012 Olympics in London as a technical official, in Rio in 2016. But the national office changes too. We went through the late 2000s, 2010s, went through several executive directors. Some of which didn't want to listen to what I had to say. So I resigned as technical committee chair. And actually, the guy behind me, I forget his name, he resigned for the same reason. So I'm kind of on the outs, so I'm not going to Tokyo, and I'm not going to the last couple of Worlds, but that's okay. My career, you know,
Speaks for itself.
Well,
I've done a lot.
Yeah, you have. You let's see. You were at. You were in what? Rio, and London, right? What was your title?
I was a technical official.
Yep.
I sat on the jury on both of those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, which is huge, and that's something I think.
The Olympics.
Are you? Yeah. No shit. It's the Olympics. You're what, the only American to do that twice? Am I not mistaken?
No, there's probably
Just a handful of you.
a few. Probably back in the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Okay.
There's another guy that went all the time.
Okay. That's a huge,
But that
huge
was
feat
that
to
was
accomplish.
that was at the discretion of Bob Hoffman too. You know, things are a little different.
Yeah, I haven't been in it anywhere near as long as you have, obviously. But even with having our LWC for 6 years now, things have changed dramatically. Is that something you can speak open about if you like or not? I mean, where do you see where weightlifting kind of was 10 years ago to now? Because it's grown so much. I mean, I think when I got my membership card as an athlete, there was only like 10 or 15,000. Now we're like at, what, 30? Something crazy like that.
Yeah, it's close to 30.
Yeah.
There was, it was only somewhere around 2004 or so. There was only maybe 4,000.
Okay. How many was the last I got mine? 2010. Yeah.
I think, of course, most of it obviously has probably been due to the CrossFit thing.
Mm-hmm.
And A lot of it's been due to the women coming in to Olympics in 2000. So yeah, we got 900, approximately 900 registered weightlifters in Minnesota.
Which that's what was that 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago.
Which we have a really big high school.
10 years ago, well, we had high school lifting 10 years ago. It was probably 300-400.
Yeah, so that's
You'd have to go back to the 90s, and then we're down maybe around 100,
Yeah.
about 100, all through that. It was kind of static when I started. Less than 100, maybe up to about 100 from the 60s to the early 90s. Then it started going up.
Where would you like to see it go, as far as growth or wherever?
Well, I think it's enough. What I like to see grow is the quality,
Yeah,
the depth of the quality.
for sure.
That has to grow.
So a
How
more
do you-
competitive field. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
How do you improve that? Do you reduce some of the weight classes, get better coaches, or what do you?
Time, maybe.
I don't know. Probably put my foot in my mouth somewhat, but
We all do.
the other sports are attracting the best athletes.
It's very
I
true.
think it's that simple.
Yeah.
We're not attracting the best athletes.
Is this a sport, that these athletes can train for 3 months out of the year when they're not in their regular football or baseball or hockey or basketball, or do they have to do it year round?
No, there's a lot of those high school athletes only do it. I mean, like I know Cannon Falls has a pretty good football program. A lot of those players do this in the winter. They count it as kind of their strength and conditioning.
Do you think the progression is needed though to do it yearly, or do you have enough time in those 3-4 months to really concentrate and do it?
I think you should still probably do some of the lifting in the off season. Obviously, it's such a high skill. But
What's your thought,
what's
Roger?
your thought, Roger?
Well, yeah, I think you need to pretty much go year round to increase that quality. And by year round, I don't mean you're going to compete every 3 months. You can take off a month at a time, maybe a couple of times during the year, but still has to be year round.
Yeah, you got to be in it some way, but there's definitely a time where you're training to compete, and probably other times where you're just practicing. It's a good way to say it.
Yeah, it'd be like cross training in some other sport.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's something that can absolutely be done. You can layer other things on top of it, but that
Yep.
can kind of be your foundation. It'll help with your performance in the other sports that you play. Something I've wondered about was, with the CTE and the concussion stuff in football, it seems like there are more people now that are more hesitant about letting their kids play football, and I think that's one of those sports that we're talking about where some of our best athletes are going into that. I've been curious as to how that will affect weightlifting or some of the other sports, if some of those athletes are going to trickle into weightlifting and some of those other sports too.
Well, some do trickle in. And those that trickle in are the quality ones we have in USA weightlifting.
Yeah.
The women especially now, I guess, because I hate to say it, the men aren't going anywhere, but except for CJ Cummings. But say like Kate and I won the Worlds, although it was a weight class that is not competed in the Olympics. She started out 5 years old as a gymnast. So I think you can't bring if you have a youth and they're in senior high school and they haven't played sports or anything else up until then. It's to me, you're not going to get a weightlifter. You're not going to get anybody. You're not going to get get them to do any sport that's
Not a
very
soccer
well.
player, not a weightlifter,
Right,
not a powerlifter.
right,
They don't
right.
have that base.
You got to have the base. They got to start off.
Well, that or you get the
The base.
opposite, where they do other sports in high school or college, and they come into you half broken. Especially football players or other sports, where they want to still compete in something, but it's almost too late to try and be a weightlifter.
That's right. Well, that's just like like those folks that go to the say NFL camp and try and make a NFL team.
Yeah.
How many of those you got wrestlers and various other people that have tried to do this?
Yeah.
Where have they ended up?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the average NFL career is under 3 years alone, even if
Yeah.
you make the team.
Well, yeah, and that's
Very
of the
short-lived.
1 or 2%.
Yeah.
No, it's less than that. What is it? Less than 1% even make
Prob-
college out of
probably,
high
yeah.
school. Then
Yeah.
out of that, only less than 1% even play.
Would you?
Yeah.
All 4 years.
Would there be any advantage for you guys to have to make it some sort of a tryout to be on Twin Cities Barbell's team? And so it's a real privilege to even be on a team, to be coached by, would that be something that would draw more attention in the future, or do you think people would shy away from that just to make it that more valuable? That you get a tryout to even be on the team to be coached by you guys, some kind of notoriety, would be kind of neat when you make it that level, but I don't know if that would work.
Well, it's never worked. I mean,
Okay.
It hasn't worked for 50 years. So
All right.
That was a nice way of saying, fuck no.
We'll just dump that question.
Well, that's something I keep saying that. I don't know why. I know it is a sport in college, but you don't see how is it not nationwide? I don't understand that. There's so many other
world events, people don't see it being.
Well, you see, like Midland University's little NAI school.
Oh, yeah,
that
in
was,
St. Louis.
happened to,
Yep.
No, they're in Nebraska, but they happen to be.
Sorry.
They were in the same conference that I played college baseball in, and they started a weightlifting or a powerlifting team, and it's actually a scholarship sport, and it's it's getting more kids into college athletics, and they're doing extremely well.
Well, there's a lot of good programs.
But-
Was it Northern Michigan as well?
Yeah.
It was really good.
Well,
There's
you
a few
would,
others, but
you
there's
would
not
hope
many.
if colleges are now offering scholarships for fishing and video games.
Right.
If
Wait, are
there's
you serious? Wait, no. Are you being serious right
Dead
now?
serious, yeah. Division one schools, because they can make money off it because of the sponsorships.
Yeah.
And so if there could be maybe a sponsorship within weightlifting in the future, that might be the way to go about
Well, that's
it.
the thing too. Was it Title 19? Right, men and women has to be even number of
Title
sports. Title 9.
You're 10 years ahead.
Yeah, right. What the hell? But let's say in the MIAC or the WIAC or some of these smaller private schools,
Yeah.
how could it be easy to travel? It'd be a cheap sport. They already have the fucking weights.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how it's not a sport in college yet. Maybe you can attest to that. Maybe it's just because people know-it-alls think they don't need it or don't want it. But
Or it's too hard.
it's you're trying to change a culture that is very difficult to change.
Yeah.
I think.
fair.
So
Just like high school, all the high schools around here. Look how long we've had the high school weightlifting. We're the only state in the country that has high school weightlifting, snatch and clean and jerk. And we've had it for 20 years.
yeah.
And look how many schools do it.
Yeah.
How many are there? 10, 12?
Very few.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
few.
Compared to the whole state.
Yeah.
Compared to the whole state, there's 400 and some high schools in the state.
Yeah.
And we get less than, whatever percent that is, 10 out of 400 and some schools. All these other schools, they couldn't care less,
No.
as far as I can tell anyway. Even when my son went to school, I went into the athletic folks there and said, hey, my son's going to school here and he's a weightlifter, and I'd come in on my own and help you guys teach these kids how to lift weights and do Olympic weightlifting. And the athletic director was a friend, not a friend, but a classmate of my older brother. So he knew the Sadeckis. He says, well, let me think about this for a while. So I let about 3 weeks go by, and obviously he's not calling back, so I give him a call and, oh, well, we've got people to do that.
It's funny you say that exact same thing. Tartan High School, like, we have a flight teacher for that. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
So that's the culture, and you're not going to change that culture overnight. You're not going to change it in a generation either.
It's going to take time.
What do you think it would take to change it?
I don't know. It may never change. It hasn't changed in 50 years.
Sure.
What makes me think it's going to change?
Mm-hmm. So speaking of culture, let's go back a little bit to when you were talking about maybe in your heyday lifting for yourself when you were with the Minneapolis group that changed to the St. Paul YMCA, that changed to the East Side, that changed to Twin City Barbell with all those same individuals. What was the glue that kept all you guys together? Was it the lifting itself, the competition? I mean, what do you think was part of that process?
Yeah, it was the competition and the camaraderie.
Okay.
I mean, we'd have a Friday night, Friday afternoon, Friday night training session. We'd all go out and have some beer.
That's great.
You know, or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't see too much camaraderie anymore.
Sure. Let me throw a few names out at you too, and just give me one of your maybe memories of these guys, because Bob been throwing me names and telling us about these guys for years. So you mentioned him earlier, and I looked him up a little bit. So Don Cundy, you met him as a lifeguard. He was one of the first, I think, people out of Minnesota, at least that I know of, that was able to deadlift over 800 pounds, right? What's one of your stories on Don Cundy? Or if you have any, or thoughts?
Well, that started the story, I guess. He actually put me in that class.
Oh, okay.
So, but then the following, I'm not sure what he found. He may have found the drugs or whatever. Anyway, like I say, he was approximately 185 pounds, but built, you know,
Sure.
really built. That first year, and we came back the next year, lifeguards. He was also a lifeguard. He was weighing 240 pounds.
Jesus.
He must
All
eat
right.
a lot of steak.
Yeah, that's steak and whole milk.
Yeah.
Wow.
And soon after that, he was doing, well, he did. I don't know if they counted it or not, but he did a 735 a deadlift, which was at that time a world record.
Oh, insane at that time.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. I know there's an old video that I pulled up that I put on our Instagram page in there and Huddle for fans to listen to see of him and maybe a Russian or Bulgarian going back and forth and deadlifting the same amount, trying to outdo each other. Just those two on the stage and nobody else. Like a basketball arena. It was pretty cool.
That would be sweet.
How about Mel Hennessy?
Mel Hennessy. Yeah, what did he need to?
There's some. I have some pictures here that I found of him doing some outdoor lifting meets, like on the shores of the Lake Calhoun or something. Were you a part of those? And what were those
Yes,
outdoors?
I was a part of that. This would be, what year would that be?
It's late 60s, wasn't it?
Yeah,
We have pictures.
These are the ones we found.
Yeah,
Doing the bench press and looks like the deadlift, and just that setting was pretty cool.
yeah, I was part of that. Whatever year that was, whatever.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
It was in conjunction with the Aquatennial, Minneapolis Aquatennial.
Okay.
You heard the Aquatennial.
Yep.
Yeah. It's in conjunction with the Minneapolis Aquatennial. We were talking to the Aquatennial folks, that organization, and they said, yeah, geez, you know, we've got all these other things that people do for the Aquatennial and demonstrations, etc., and that. So we did this basically for the Aquatennial. And we did it on the 32nd Street beach at Calhoun. We did it at the Thomas Beach at Calhoun.
Oh, very cool.
One year we did the Rod and Custom Show in the wintertime at the St. Paul, the old Civic Center,
Sure.
whatever that was called back then.
Okay.
It was done on a stage I'll call it a stage, but it wasn't any bigger than that 4x8 sheet of plywood there. It was up in the air, no lie, it was at least 4 feet high.
Really?
Yeah, we're
standing on top of it?
doing over 300-pound clean and jerks on
Jesus.
that.
How quick did it take that floor to break?
Yeah, no shit.
Quick, I
It
imagine.
was built pretty solid. I'm not sure what was
A little sketchy.
what was under there, but
Well, that's what I like to see. Is back then, it seems like the power lifters, the Olympic weightlifters, just seemed like meatheads all hung out together in tranquility and peace. We have that here, but it's one of those things where it's a powerlifting gym or Olympic weightlifting or whatever. But it's cool to see like back then, you guys just hung out to get strong. Didn't matter what sport you were doing.
Odd lifts or
Yeah,
weightlifting.
odd lifts or weightlifting. Yes.
so that would have been the 60s then, because that would have been before I was in the military and before
Okay.
I was really good, because these other guys kind of did the demonstrating
Sure.
and I did more of looking. On the Thomas beach, we had 4 guys lift a Volkswagen off the ground.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a picture of
I got
that
a
on
picture of
there.
that as well, yeah.
Will you resend me those?
Yeah, I get it from Bob Jones Jr. What was he like as he got you running around? Is he annoying or did you work hard? Bob Jones Jr.
Yeah. Bob is here.
No, he worked hard. He didn't. There was no nonsense out of Bob Jr. He worked out.
That's what Derwin said. I don't know if I believe it, but okay.
Yeah, he did. He was. I'd just be guessing, but there was a 3-year span of time. No, there was a 3-year span of time between maybe he was 14 to 17, approximately. 3-year span of time where every meet he entered, he went 6 for 6 and did PRs in both lifts.
You don't see that
Every
anymore.
meet in 3 years.
Yeah, you don't see that ever now. I haven't.
Must have been the coaching.
Must have been the coaching, yeah.
It was.
And
I give
when
it to.
Derwin took over, what happened?
Yeah. I give it. It's the hair. It's the hair. Shots fired though. Yeah.
So what's been in your life beside weightlifting? You married and kids and stuff. What's kind of been your thing outside, if there is anything?
Oh, well, yeah, I got 5 grandkids. That says something.
Good for you.
2 daughters and a son and 5 grandkids.
Okay.
The oldest grandkid is in college in Montana,
Well,
and the youngest is in middle school in North Dakota. The 2 daughters both are chemical engineers.
oh wow.
Oh. Because you're what is your trade? You're like a meteorologist, right? Or
Well, I was a meteorologist in the Air Force.
that's okay.
Okay.
And then when I started working for Department of Transportation, was called a planner because I had a math background. And while I was at the Transportation Department, they had a program where I could go back to school and get a civil engineering degree, and they give me time off. And I worked part-time, and I said, hey, that's for me. So I became a civil engineer then. So I got a degree in math and a degree in civil engineering.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, because you have isn't there
Well,
like this?
meteorology was Air Force. When I first went in the Air Force, well, after college, Uncle Sam comes knocking on the door and says, let's go. And I said, well, I don't want to go to the Army for a couple of years. He says, what else is there? Air Force says, well, we need meteorologists. We'll send you back to school for a year. Get a commitment of another 3 years as a meteorologist. All right.
Yeah.
So I went to school for meteorology, and I could have had another degree in meteorology if I would have done some other coursework that, because I went to St. Louis University, but would have done some coursework to get that, I would have had done some other coursework.
Sure, gotcha.
But,
Except for your math background, because isn't there like the Sadecki formula? Don't you have something for it, right? Isn't there one?
that was 1973 or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, we had the Hoffman formula back then.
Okay.
I don't think we had the Sinclair yet.
Yeah, 'cause that came out like early 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Something like that.
I think we had the Hoffman. And I didn't like Hoffman's formulas because it obviously favored the heavier lifters.
I like it.
But,
Yeah, because they actually, some of the coursework, they list a lot of those different ones.
Really?
They used to, yeah, when I first took my use, that was a while ago.
I'm surprised they even mentioned that.
Yeah, because I remember Hoffman's, obviously Sinclair showed the Sadecki. I'm like, Sadecki? I know that one.
It was in,
This was like 10 years ago.
it was in Reno's newsletter back in the 70s, and I went to, I put it on the agenda for the national convention. Back then we had, every year was a national convention, weightlifting.
Okay.
Now the board kind of takes over and there's no convention anymore. But back then we had representatives from every LWC.
Gotcha.
And it was a convention. So I was presented this at the convention, and I had my reasons, and I did it by graph, actually, and taking numbers on a graph and things like that. There was no trend line, anything like that. It was all graphed. And what I said was, if you're within 5 points, then you have to, then it's a tie, and you have to break the tie by something subjective. Whether it's, well, did one guy break records and the other didn't, and various other things. So, why have a best lifter? That's what it was used for. Why have a best lifter that wins by 0.01 point and it only does what he always does, and another guy that breaks national records lose out on best lifter because he's 0.01 less.
That makes sense.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
Well,
makes sense.
we got to the convention, and somebody said, let's table this. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It was too complex or whatever. So it was tabled. It was never brought up again, ever.
Really?
And then when Sinclair came along, I didn't create anything else, but I sort of did, but I never presented anything. What Sinclair does is a least squares trend line. It does a trend line, and the formula on a trend line was logarithmic that he used. Well, a trend line that is quadratic is more accurate. But anyway, he used the logarithmic. But then what he did Sinclair did was compare it with the super heavyweight, Alexiev, beat Alexiev. So everything is compared to that super heavyweight, which to me screws the whole thing up. Because it depends on that heavyweight, and Sinclair changes it every 4 years, and whatever that super heavyweight world record is in 4 years is what the whole formula depends on
Really? I didn't know
every
that.
4 years.
I did not know
And they
that.
said, that's crazy.
That seems very skewed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to use a math term here. I kind of remember my shit from college. No, that doesn't make much. That doesn't make sense to me at all.
That's the best thing that's out there, though. It's not bad. It's fairly accurate. It was really screwed up when the women came in and they had to make a Sinclair formula for the women. Well, the one year at the Olympics, there was Tatiana, and there was the Chinese girl.
Which are both just.
Well, Tatiana only weighed 115 kilos at the time. The Chinese girl weighed 150 kilos at the time, and both doing a world record. Well, what do you use?
Yeah,
What do you use?
Well, not only that, how is that not skewed? Because weren't they
It's
both popped for
screwed. If you
doping?
use one, it's skewed one way. If you
Yeah.
use the other, it's skewed the other way.
Well, not only that, like how can
and
you
it's
use
skewed
that?
all the way down to your lighter classes.
Yeah.
Well, that and they're not clean.
But they still use it.
Yeah. So,
They still use it. And Sinclair's been dead how many years now?
yeah. So you can't refute it or change
And
it.
now you know what they're using.
Uh-uh.
They're using as Robbie points.
What's that? Explain.
It's on the IWF website where Rob Nagy, N-A-G-Y, Nagy, from Hungary, who's, I think he's an engineer himself. He came up with, these are points for people to get into 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. You gotta get so many points if you want to lift in Tokyo.
Oh, yeah.
Do
Okay.
you get those points from competing in international competitions?
You
or-
go to international
Yeah.
competition,
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
then you're compared against the world record. If you want to keep this simple, you're compared against the world record, and you get so many points, and these points accumulate. That's the only way you can get into 2020. The only way you can get into 2020.
Isn't it basically to kind of prove like your potential to compete at a high level? Is that like their argument,
well,
right?
yeah. But these Robbie points is a formula for each class. Each class has its own formula based on
Sounds
the world record.
complicated.
Has its own formula.
Yeah.
But USA weightlifting, Phil Andrews, or somebody says, well, we're going to use this to determine who our best lifters are. We're going to use this to determine who we send to international competitions. That's not what it was designed for.
Yeah.
It was designed for each weight class by itself to figure out who's going to be invited to the Olympic Games. That's
Yeah.
what they're using now.
Yeah. If you don't use that, you might be in a little bit of a pickle. Especially if all of a sudden you have someone who won't get as many points, right?
Well, yeah, if you don't lift in a 6-month period and you don't get any points, you might as well forget about lifting in the 2020.
Fan. So so are you saying basically for the U.S. we should be using that system essentially, just to make sure everything's cohesive?
Well, what are we using it for?
Yeah.
We're using it to determine who goes to international competitions, a ranking list. The ranking list we use is based on those points.
Yeah.
And each one is different. When it first came out, Naj had to work with world records at the time, and he has the senior Robbie points, and he's got the junior Robbie points. He's got the youth. Well, I don't know if he has junior, senior and junior, but he's got the youth now also. Well, the youth has, both men and women, say the men. For senior and junior level, you've got the 109 and 109 plus. But for youth, you've got 102 and 102 plus, right? Okay, well, if you look at those points, the way the formula is for those points and the world records that were set up, you can do less as a 102 plus and get more Robbie points than you can for 102. The same with the women.
Yeah.
The women, it's 87 for senior women, junior women, it's 87 plus. But for youth women, it's 81 and 81 plus. The same thing there. You can be an 81 plus and have more points
With lower numbers.
with a lower number than the 81.
Really? Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
So there's a discrepancy there.
For sure, yeah. That's interesting, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, why can't it just be who has the best numbers? I just don't get that.
Yeah.
How about the 2016 Rio Iran story?
What's that?
You want that story?
Yeah, we do, yes, I meant to ask about that. Please dish it out.
Well, you had Salimi, who is from Iran, and was favored to win, more or less favored to win the super heavyweight. And he comes out and presses out. Well, the three referees give him three white lights, but he pressed it out. I mean, you know, films, anything else, you can see he pressed it out. Well, the jury says, stop the competition. The jury deliberates. The jury says, we reverse that lift. It was a press out. Well, of course, they went nuts. You know, Salimi went nuts, his coach went nuts. They come storming to the jury table. He even lay down in back of the jury table and tried to stop the contest. And contest still kept going on. Anyway, I wasn't even on the jury. I was a reserve juror, because they have 6 jurors and there's always a reserve.
Okay.
Well, that particular class, I was a reserve juror, and I was sitting on the side, and I could see the press out too. And the jury did what they should have done. Well, within a few days, I'm getting all this. I've got an Instagram account, you know. Within a few days, I'm getting all these things out of Iran, says, and a lot of them was in what do they call that language? You know, all the scribbling and
Not English.
not English.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I know what you're talking about.
a lot of that
Arabic or
was
whatever.
that, so I couldn't read it, but a lot of it was in English, and it said FUCKU, and I'm going to hack your account. I'm going to get you for this.
Yeah,
I got all kinds of hate mail on Instagram because of that.
So that was when they were all booing while Marcin was still lifting. Was
That's
that?
right.
That's,
Okay.
yes,
So
yes, it
that
was. And
okay.
dude, hats off to him for
Yeah,
fucking.
he still went out there.
Still went out there and made that lift. That was bullshit, by the way, for
Yeah.
him. Poor guy. Yeah, I remember when that happened. Everyone around here was like, knew it was the jury, and they're like, oh, Roger. red light, Roger. He did it again. Fuck.
So let's move a year
That's
later.
a year later, which I was in the area, by the way, when that happened.
2017
Yeah.
in Anaheim.
Yep.
Salimi. I am on the jury. I'm president of the jury. And Salimi, 3 white lights, no referees. The jury says, well, wait a minute, let's stop the contest. We deliberate and say, we reverse this lift. Well, all the Iranian fans in the audience kind of storm the area. They come up behind me. They had these stanchions, you know, behind me there. They come trying to get at me.
Oh my God.
So the competition ends, because we're near the end of the competition by then, and all the loaders come over, and they get behind me. So these guys because they were trying to reach out at me, and everything else, like, get behind me to protect me.
Wow.
So anyway, the whole jury then, we were staying maybe 3/4 of a mile away. We had transportation. We were supposed to take a bus out in front. No, we went to the back of the auditorium, got a van, and took us out of there.
We caught it, I think. So did you get any death threats? Did you get any Instagram threats after that one too?
No. Surprising. I'm not sure why. It was a different, sort of a different audience, I think, in that. In Rio, all the spectators, etc., from Iran that were boisterous about it, were able to get there from Iran.
Gotcha.
Whereas in Anaheim, the weightlifters were lucky if they got a visa to come here.
Gotcha.
So I don't think any spectators from Iran got a visa to come here at all. It was all Iran Americans, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, I heard about that. I was sitting actually at the airport in LA when that went down.
Really?
Yeah, because I coached a seminar that weekend. We actually met Maddie Rogers on her way out, and then we were watching it, and me and a buddy were having drinks, and I'm like, holy shit, I knew it was you. I'm like, a year later, and it fucking happens again. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So,
I got a quick story with Bob Jr. here.
Please.
The air period.
Back in the Bob was tested several times, drug tested, and that was kind of the infancy of drug testing. And at one competition, I went back with him. I was like an escort. We go back there, and they had beer in the refrigerator. They thought at the time, well, maybe these guys will urinate a little quicker if they have some beer, right?
Well, yeah, rightfully so.
So, hey, Bob, beer. Well, yeah, okay, I'll have a beer. Well, can I have one too? Okay, you can have one too. So we drink a beer. How about another one? drink another beer. By then, I'm sure he could urinate, but he just kept pounding the beers.
No, nothing's coming yet.
pounding the beers until he just couldn't hold it any longer.
They got a full cup then, didn't they? Yeah.
And it was less than 2 years later. There was no more beer and doping control.
Oh, that's funny. I know I have that picture of him and Jeff Michaels drinking a beer. I think at Worlds.
I think that's where it was at, right?
Getting tested. Yeah.
Yeah.
How things have changed. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would love to go.
You
saw to hook it up.
You don't even get Gatorade. All you get is water now.
Yeah. Cheap asses.
What's that, Bob? Do you want to say something?
Oh, I said I made him miss the bus in Germany. Stan Bailey was so mad.
Tell that story.
Well, I'm done.
Thank you for coming out here.
Well, hold on, I just want one more question. So
Unless I get a beer to get my throat.
We usually have beer in the back.
You ain't buying beer?
We usually have it. Someone drink it all.
We have some on save just for Capitera if you ever come.
Yeah. If you ever bring,
there should be a 12-pack back there.
Yeah. I have a shit ton of beer at my house. I live half a mile away.
What was your last question you want to ask?
Just kind of. I always kind of end with this or try to. So you've done so much in weightlifting for so long. I mean, where do you kind of want to go from here? Like, what's kind of the game plan moving forward? That's Brandy. That'll put hair on your back there, Raj.
That'll like stand up again.
Well, I don't know. I'm at the end of the rope. I mean, I don't have much. I'm in past my mid-70s already, so I don't have much longer to go. That's all I can say.
So then how about,
I've done everything and more that I think I could have done.
No, and you've done a lot, and we all appreciate it. Can't say enough what you've done for the sport.
yeah, from all the sports
thanks,
Bob,
yeah.
stories Bob's told us and everything we've heard you done, we thank you for everything.
Yeah, for sure.
And thanks for coming on today.
Here's a celebratory beer.
The arrogant bastard. Yeah.
Well, maybe I can talk longer.
Hey, did you say you had a Instagram account people can find you at?
Yeah.
He does, yes.
What's just Roger Sadecki, or what's the name of your account?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, nothing-
He's like, yeah, man, what else?
what else is there? That's my name.
That's my name.
We're gonna have to share
It
these.
could be Roger Dotson if you.
I think it is. I have you. We'll tag you and all this stuff too.
Take a look at it.
Yeah.
Well, you better come up with another question, Nick.
You cracked a beer.
Oh,
Man.
you cracked the beer open?
It's on now. How is it?
Ask him how strong that Hennessy was.
Yeah. So how strong? And was your Mel Hennessy? How strong was he? And how many
Very-
gallons of milk did you drink a day?
Very strong. Yeah. Very strong. I could go on for a few more minutes with Hennessy, I suppose.
That'd be great.
He had a basement gym in his basement. That's the first time I met him. And this is when we were at Minneapolis Weightlifting Club. We actually had a meeting there. Phil Markert, put the Minneapolis Weightlifting Club together.
Phil?
And we had a meeting.
Is that group of guys there, maybe?
That's Hennessy there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a bunch of our guys. Yeah, that's our club. Yeah. That's probably Minneapolis Weightlifting Club. Yeah.
We'll put this on the IG so people can see it on the
Oh,
account.
we will. Yes.
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah. So anyway, we had a meeting there.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
How cool is that?
But I was at his basement gym. Well, you know how a basement is. It's like 7 feet tops.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that to the rafters. Well, anyway, he dug out part of it. So guys taller than him, he was short. So he could do anything he wanted overhead. But if somebody came over to work out with him that was taller, well, they'd touch the ceiling. So he dug out part of his basement for
It was a rented
the
house
weight.
too, right, Raj? Wasn't that a rented property?
I don't
My dad
know.
always said.
I think he owned it.
Oh, okay.
He owned that. Pretty sure.
So did he make all you guys shovel it
Selfie,
for him?
Pardon?
Did he make you guys shovel it with him?
No, this was done. I don't know who did it. To tell you the truth, I don't know who did it because it was done before I got there.
Okay.
Before I even started. But anyway, the first time I met him was in the basement gym, and I'm watching him. He's going to work out, right? He's on the bench. That was his lift, the bench, of course. He's on the bench and slaps on 245s, 135 pounds. And he's benching away, about 10, 12 reps. Just, really pretty fast. Throws on a couple more 45s, 225. It's like it didn't change, just pumping away. Well, a couple more 45s. He's got 315 by now, right? Just a hair slower. Still does about 6 reps. A couple more 45s. 405. I don't know, man. Started, a rep would go less than a second. Now it's maybe going a second. And then no more 45s, but it throws on a couple of 25s. Then now maybe 3 reps.
Wow.
And I just, Jesus. What is this guy?
That's awesome.
But we got him Olympic lifting. He was in Olympic lifting contests.
Really?
Oh yeah. He press, snatch, clean and jerk. But his press and his clean and jerk are about the same.
Okay.
No technique, huh?
In fact, one time one time, this would be in the 60s, of course, 64, 65, approximately. I forget what he pressed, 300. I think he pressed 300, yeah, it was a round number, 300, yeah. And he snatched maybe 240, approximately. Comes a clean and jerk, starts with 300. And he's slow and clumsy. But he's strong as hell. So he cleans it, and he goes to jerk. He tries something fancy, and moves his feet around. And the bar falls in the back of his neck. And then he presses it out.
Oh, that's great.
Did I do it?
Great.
Did I do it? Did I get a green light or white light?
Oh, you got red lights.
Sadecki red light.
Oh, that's awesome. I've heard that story, and every time I hear it, I'm like, I wish I could have fucking seen it.
Were you in the gym when Pater would come in there and do overhead presses up to like 400 or 500 pounds as well in the day?
400 or 500 pounds.
When he would just do his straight lock presses, just the push presses?
Well, it probably was. I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
Maybe it was too early as well. I don't know.
So my dad wanted to quit.
I didn't see Patera press much.
Is that what we're doing, service?
No. I was out of the service. Patera came down there in like 71, before the 72 Olympics,
Just remember my dad saying that he came in there one time. My dad said I was clean jerking about 365. I felt like I was really making headway, and
But, yeah,
Patera walks in. Patera's already in there, so he started warming up, and he said,
yeah.
"Get 505." He named the plates and the collars and everything. My dad, I said that, well, he must be squatting, and did 5 push presses, and he said, I just wanted to pick up my gym bag and go home.
Oh, shit.
It's awesome.